Today we're gonna be talking about a question I keep getting a lot, and that is, what is the best race for playing a warrior? There is actually a lot of really cool options as a melee that you can look at. We are gonna be talking about how big a deal they are. We're gonna try to look at the numbers really quick because they are commonly misunderstood, and we're gonna be talking about tanking and DPSing at the same time, of course. So what are the racials, okay? We can start with the alliance very quick. First of all, you got the Dwarf. The Dwarf got Find Treasure, that's not important. Frost Resistance, not important. Gaunt Specialization, not important. But they got Stone Form. Stone Form is actually pretty freaking big for PvP. Why? Because Blind and because Crippling Poison are poisons. And if they can break out of them with Stone Form, they get immune for them for 8 seconds. That is freaking huge. It may not be the best PvP racial ever, but they are a really good racial. And on top of that, they also get 10% armor. Now, how much is 10% armor? Depending on your gear level, it is probably something like 5% less damage taken. It is not very significant for tanking bosses, but you can get rid of diseases, which is probably the most important part. It's just a convenience thing for some fights where you are gonna inevitably be getting poisons. For example, Viscidus is particularly annoying in the Alliance because you don't have disease cleansing totems, and being able to break out of disease and poison without totems because you don't have any, that's pretty cool. Although, of course, outside of PvP, dwarves are pretty much worthless, they just look really cool. Now the Gnome. The Gnome is very popular for warriors. It doesn't make a lot of sense, right? Why would you pick a Gnome for a warrior? So what do they get? What do they get? 10 arcane resistance, that's pretty worthless. Intellect, well, you're a warrior, we're not gonna care too much about that. Engineering, actually engineering is something almost every warrior gets. So it is something, but it is not gonna do anything because you're gonna hit the cap anyway and it's not gonna matter, right? So it only makes leveling engineering a little cheaper. That's what this racial does. And the Escape Artist, okay, this one is the important one. This is the baby version of the racial that the humans got in Wrath of the Lich King. They can break out of any immobilization or movement speed reduction in a cast of 0.5 seconds. So they are very well the best PvP race in the game. It is a second PvP trinket basically. Think of a Frost Nova, think of a Frost Slow, think of like Cone of Cold, think of Crippling Poison, also Crippling Poison. They can break out of all of that. So the main weakness of the warrior, that is that they can get kited, well, gnomes are a little better at dealing with that. So if you're a PvPer, gnome is a really good choice. However, they are still gnomes. Now the human is rather interesting. They get Diplomacy, which reputations are not a big deal in vanilla. There is not that many reputations you gotta farm, but 10% rep is 10% rep. That is not nothing. If we were talking like TVC, that would be huge because almost everything needs a reputation in TVC. Not the case though. What humans got is a deceptively useful racial for PvP, which is Perception. They can detect people on stealth a little better. But of course, the part that we want to talk about, they get Mace and Sword Specialization. They are the only race that gets 2 separate specializations for weapons. What is the specialization of weapons? They get 5 weapon skill for each. So what is 5 weapon skill? At level 60 when you're fighting a boss, which is level 63, 5 weapon skill is actually 3% hit. You gain 3% better chance to hit, you lose 3% chance to miss. As you guys know, hit gear is very hard to come by in vanilla, so this is absolutely ginormous 3% hit for free, but that's not it. It also reduces the chance for the boss to dodge your attack by a tiny amount, so that's kinda cool. It is not a lot, I don't recall the exact number. I think it was something like 0.2%. But most importantly, and the reason that weapon skill is always gonna beat anybody else, if you take a look here, we start here, this is 0 extra weapon skill. You need 9% hit of course because you got your normal hit cap, but if you got your 5 skill weapon racial, you only need 6% hit like we said. But the most important part, you got glancing blows for your white hits. Your normal attacks that are not abilities, they got a chance to do less damage against bosses. As you can see, without a weapon skill, the percentage can be quite devastating. That's 35% less damage on an attack. That is 35% less rage. That is a big freaking deal. But if you got 5 weapon skill, you only lose 15%. That is less than half the penalty. And this is exactly why humans are so freaking busted, because not only they get rid of that glancing penalty, but they also have two of the best weapon types in the game. Pretty much every single tier has one sword that is amazing for DPSing. Of course, the best sword in the game for tanking, Thunder Fury, is a sword. That's the best weapon. And they also got maces, and there is quite a lot of two-handed maces as well, so you can go for either one. But humans are just, period, the best freaking racial for weapons in the game. There are some ways around it, and we're gonna be talking about that in a minute. But you're gonna see in the Alliance almost every single warrior is a human, and it is for this very reason. Swords and maces, you basically cannot go wrong with swords and maces. Now the Night Elf is kinda funny. You got pretty much nature resistance. Okay, nature resistance for AQ40 or something. You can move faster as a ghost when you die, and 1% dodge. Yeah, and then you get Shadow Meld, which is basically you get like a stealth for when you're out of combat. Back in the day there was a macro to charge people in combat with it, but they fixed that bug anymore. So yeah, pretty much Night Elves are absolutely useless. They do not do anything for warriors, sadly, or for any class really. They are absolutely worthless. Now the Horde is what I would consider something way more interesting, because you got two really good candidates for best race ever. First of all, you got the Orc. The Orc has not one, not two, but three very valuable racials. Orcs are super broken. First of all, they got the Axe specialization. Of course, axes are a pretty good weapon for dual wield once you get to Blackwing Lair, Cruel Shoruk. That axe is gonna last you pretty much all the way into Nax Ramas. There is lots and lots and lots of really good two-handed axes that you can use in PvP, of course. For tanking, it is not so great. There is not a lot of decent tanking axes, but everything else for DPS, Orc is a really good choice. Their other racial is Blood Fury. Now, Blood Fury is very commonly misunderstood. It affects your base melee attack power, so it doesn't give you 25% total attack power. It is a fixed amount, but it is still a really good racial. Of course, free attack power, how can you go wrong with that? But you take 50% less healing when you get it on, so that means that if you're a tank, you cannot really use it, and that kinda sucks. And of course, their other racial, Hardiness, they get a 25% stun resistance. And if you get, there is a talent in prot, let me show you. Right here, Iron Will, you can get another 15% resistance to stuns, which is really freaking annoying. So yeah, needless to say, if you're fighting an Orc in PvP, they are gonna resist that stun almost half the time. It is crazy. So overall, the Orc is an amazing PvE race and an amazing PvP race. They got pretty much everything. If you are not quite sure what you should roll for, Orc is always the default choice. Now the next race is my favorite race, of course, my Leal homeland, the Tauren. What do the Tauren get? Well, they get 5% HP, so 5% more total HP. You are a little tankier. Is that gonna be a big deal in a raid? Well, no, not at all, but you can feel it. You will definitely notice it if you have it, and I do play a tank, so you got that going on. And they also get War Stomp. War Stomp is a casted stun. It lasts 2 seconds, which is pretty decent for a stun, and it hits 4 targets. 5 targets actually. So War Stomp is a really useful tanking ability, especially during trash pools in dungeons. I use War Stomp a whole lot. In PvP, it is not as great as you might think, because diminishing returns, like War Stomp is another stun that you're gonna be doing alongside your teammates, doing a stun on somebody trying to kill him. And War Stomp very often, more often than not, actually messes up the diminishing returns of CC, and it is not a great idea to use it in PvP, so that kinda sucks. You of course can get like a clutch War Stomp when you just kick a spell at the right time, you know, with the stun. That is definitely something really useful, but War Stomp is not a very good PvP racial. However, once again, I cannot understate how much usefulness, how much value I get from War Stomp when I do a dungeon. As a tank, you really miss it when you do not have it, believe me. But overall, sadly, the Tauren is not a very good race. I pick it because it looks cool. Let me show you something. Take a look at my boy. Tell me this guy doesn't look cool, bro. Come on. So yeah, Tauren is probably a no, but then we got the Troll. Now the Troll is the second best race you can take, and actually it can defeat the orc and the human. This is all about the theoretical damage here we're gonna be talking. They get 5% damage against Beast, which is cool, that's pretty nice. But here, Berserking, you get 10% attack speed and you can get it all the way up to 30% if you are low on HP. It depends on your HP. I think if you are under 20%, that is the max you get. Now, the thing that makes Berserking work is Edge Masters. You can get a weapon racial. It's gonna cost you like 7,000 gold in fresh right now. It is insane, but you can get a weapon racial for your character, even if you're a troll. You can also get these gloves that give you daggers, so if you're a tank, you're gonna be using a dagger to tank most likely early on. So there you go, you can get a weapon racial somehow with one of those things. And Berserking is way better than attack power, okay? 30% attack speed is nothing to sneeze at. So trolls are actually the most theoretical threat per second you can get, and they are also, if you get Edge Masters, the more DPS you can get in the entire. They are the best racial in the game. Now, are you gonna get Edge Masters, the 7,000 gold item? I am not gonna swipe. No, I am not gonna swipe. I am not gonna get it. And you are probably not. You shouldn't get it. You shouldn't get it. I'm looking at you. Do not swipe. Do not swipe for those gloves. So yeah, if you are not a swiper, troll is probably not for you unless you tank, because if you are a tank, you're gonna be using daggers, and dagger items are very easy to find. You can also get this dagger from Dire Maul. Of course, Dire Maul is not out yet, but you can get this as an offhand for when you're dual wielding tanking. You can do daggers with that. Honestly, like just dagger DPS Fury, it is not that bad. You only sacrifice some whirlwind damage. That is not terrible. I would still go daggers if I were a troll as dual wield Fury. So yeah, troll is also a very respectable race. And if you are one of those super tryhard swipers or a tank, even a normal tank, troll is probably the best race in the game. And finally, Undead. Well, Undead, they get free food, cannibalize, you know, they eat you when they kill you. That's kind of funny for disrespecting people, but that's pretty much all they get. Really, that's not a big deal. They get Will of the Forsaken. Now, Will of the Forsaken will break you out of Charm, Fear, and Sleep. It's a PvP racial, of course, and it will break you out of them. And that's very important. That's a very important distinction, because warriors do have a fear immunity. It is called Berserker Rage, and you gotta be in Berserker stance first of all, and it will not break you out of fears. You cannot stance dance when you are feared. So Will of the Forsaken is definitely something that will come in handy in several situations in PvP. It also makes some fights, like for example Nefarian, it makes it a lot easier, but no, it is not a good racial. It will be almost useless for a warrior. You will get more value out of every other race except the Tauren. They are just terrible for warriors. If you were like a caster, it is actually amazing because casters do not have a fear immunity, but warriors do. So it is just redundant. So TLDR, what races should you roll? Well, if you are gonna PvE and PvP, Orc is the no-brainer. Orc is number one, the best race you can get. It has amazing racials for both, and you really cannot go wrong with the Orc. If you wanna exclusively PvE, you can make an argument that the troll is even better, but you gotta swipe. I mean, you need the Edge Masters, or you gotta wait until the Hungering Cold in freaking Nax Ramas or something like that, or yeah, you're pretty much screwed. You can do dagger tank. If you're a tank, even if you're not a sweater, you can get the gloves and you can get all the way there. So that is something you can do as a troll. I would say trolls are the best tanking race in the game. If I were a true tryhard, and I am not, I play Tauren because I think they look freaking cool, I would never pick a Tauren and I would never pick an Undead. Now, if you are Alliance, Human is the go-to PvE spec. It doesn't come close, okay? Sword and Mace specialization, because there is a lot of parts across the progression of the game that orcs do not have an amazing axe to pick up, but there is always, and I mean always, a good sword. Two-hander or one-hander, there is always at least one good sword every tier for you to pick up, tanking or DPS. And you also got maces. You got that versatility that maybe you can get a mace instead. So humans are just freaking perfect for PvE. They will always be the best in the Alliance. And for PvP, I would say that the Gnome is the only reasonable choice. If you are only gonna PvP, if you only care about that, breaking out of roots is easily the best thing you can possibly get. Now, don't get me wrong, the Dwarf racial is also kinda neat for PvP, but it doesn't come close. You gotta go Gnome. If you're a tryharder, a lot of PvP ranker like rank 14 guilds, they demand you go Gnome, which is kinda messed up, right? But yeah, that's just what it takes to get rank 14 with one of those premates. And that's gonna be it for today. What did you roll? What are you gonna roll? Let me know. And if you're one of the Tauren boys in the chat, spam that emote, subscribe, join the Discord, and thank you for watching.